Ever get that feeling? Like, history class kind of skipped a few chapters.
I know what you mean.
We're diving into the Gilded Age today.
Oh, juicy.
And trust me, the real stories, way juicier than any textbook.
Way more scandalous, too, I bet.
Our subject, Madeline Astor. You might know her from the Titanic.
Right.
But hold on to your hats.
This is good.
Because her life before the disaster was a whole soap opera. Wealth, scandal, and those New York elites playing by their own rules.
Now, what's captivating about Madeline Astor is she was born into a world, well, most could only dream of.
Right.
Yet her story is anything but a fairy tale. We're talking peak Gilded Age here, a time of, well, rapid industrialization in the U.S., fortunes were made and lost overnight.
Wow.
And social climbing, practically an Olympic sport. Imagine the Astors being like the Kardashians of their time.
Okay.
But with way more money and even bigger hats.
Oh, definitely bigger hats. Okay, so picture this. 1891, New York City.
Right.
Little Madeline Force is born into, well, one of the most influential families in the city.
No kidding.
Her dad's shipping business wasn't just successful.
Right.
It practically made him New York royalty.
Exactly. This wasn't just about having money. This was about power, you know? The Forces, they were basically celebrities, trendsetters.
Wow.
And they were expected to marry within their circle.
Of course.
Which is what makes Madeline's story even more fascinating.
How so?
Because she ends up breaking the mold in some pretty shocking ways.
And she did it all while being like a total catch. She went to Miss Spence's school, right?
Right. Yeah, one of the most prestigious schools for girls, top notch.
And her Wikipedia page even calls her an especially brilliant pupil.
Oh, she was clever.
But get this. Flash forward to 1911.
Okay.
And who does this brilliant pupil decide to marry?
On the edge of my seat.
John Jacob Astor IV, a man almost twice her age.
Oh, wow.
And fresh off a scandalous divorce.
Talk about shaking up high society. This wasn't just your typical, May-December romance. Astor wasn't just older. He was one of the wealthiest men in the world. And in those days, divorces, especially among the upper crust, scandalous.
You're kidding.
Some Episcopal priests even refused to officiate their wedding.
Okay, so it's not every day you see a marriage make headlines for being too scandalous, even before a shipwreck gets involved. This tells you a lot about Madeline. She wasn't afraid to ruffle some feathers, defy those expectations, placed upon women, particularly in her position.
Absolutely. This is a woman who could have easily lived a life of, well, quiet privilege.
I guess so.
But she was thrust into the spotlight early on. And as we'll see, this was just the beginning of her unconventional journey.
And then, of course, the Titanic.
Right.
5 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Sailing with her husband.
Yeah.
On what was supposed to be, the grandest ship of its time.
It's almost impossible to talk about Madeline Astor without mentioning the Titanic.
Right.
It's such a tragic and well-known event.
Of course.
But what's often overlooked is the human element.
Yeah, yeah.
The individual stories of courage and resilience.
Right.
Amidst all that chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We know Madeline survived.
Right.
But it's those details, those little glimpses into what she actually went through that night.
Yeah.
Those are what really paint a picture of her character.
I agree.
Like the story about her giving her fur shawl to a third-class passenger.
Really?
To keep her child warm.
Oh, wow.
Think about that for a second. It's the middle of the night.
Right.
The ship is sinking.
Oh, my God.
And here's Madeline, a woman who had every luxury imaginable, thinking about the well-being of a complete stranger.
It really speaks volumes, doesn't it? About her empathy, her compassion.
It's incredible, right? Yeah. And then there's that image.
Yeah.
Almost surreal to picture of the Astors calmly sitting on those mechanical horses.
Really?
In the gymnasium.
Wow. Yeah.
Waiting for their turn to board the lifeboats.
The juxtaposition of that calm, almost like, ordinary activity.
I know.
Against the backdrop of impending doom. It's just chilling.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, the heartbreaking detail of Colonel Astor pleading to join his pregnant wife on the lifeboat, only to be refused.
It's a stark reminder that even immense wealth couldn't bend those rigid social norms.
I know. It's unbelievable.
Of the time.
And the fact that he asked for the lifeboat number.
Oh, wow.
clinging to that sliver of hope that he might find her later.
Yeah.
It gets me every time.
He tragically didn't survive.
Right.
And suddenly, Madeline, at just 19 years old, finds herself a widow.
Oh my gosh.
Thrust into, well, a whole new level of scrutiny and public fascination.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
The weight of that grief, the pressure of being so young.
Right.
So wealthy.
Right.
And so publicly defined by this tragedy.
Right.
How do you even begin?
How do you even begin to rebuild your life after something like that? It's fascinating to see how she navigated that new reality.
Right.
She withdrew from the public eye for a time, chose to grieve privately.
I can imagine.
Yeah, her first public appearance after the disaster was a luncheon she hosted.
Oh, really?
For the captain and doctor of the Carpathia.
Oh, wow.
The ship that rescued the survivors.
Right.
A gesture of gratitude, but also a way of slowly, stepping back into public life on her own terms.
It's amazing after all that.
It is.
And let's not forget, of course, the stipulations in Colonel Astor's will.
Oh, right.
If Madeline remarried,
she
would lose a significant portion of her inheritance.
Wow.
Can you imagine being in that position?
I can't.
The world watching your every move.
Right.
Waiting to see if you'll choose, love or money.
It's a classic dilemma, isn't it?
Right.
But remember, this is Madeline Astor.
Right.
A woman who had already shown that she wasn't afraid to defy expectations.
Right, right.
So what does she do?
What?
She remarries.
No kidding.
Twice.
Wow.
And her choices are, well,
yeah.
Let's just say they made quite the statement.
So she's a young widow, right? Inheriting a fortune, but facing this huge decision. Remarry and potentially lose it all.
It's a tough one.
What does Madeline do?
What?
First, she marries a banker. Seems like a safe choice.
On the surface, yeah, absolutely.
Sensible.
But then, a few years later, she gets divorced.
No.
And does something truly, truly unexpected.
What's that?
She marries Enzo Fioramonte.
Who is that?
An Italian actor.
An actor.
And get this, a boxer.
Talk about a plot twist. This wasn't just like a fling, right?
No.
She had 2 sons with Enzo.
He did.
This is where all those societal expectations we talked about, they really come into play.
Totally.
Remember, this is, the 1920s?
The Roaring '20s.
For a woman of her standing, to marry for love.
Right.
Not just, security or social climbing. Right.
Right. It was a bold move.
Very bold.
It really makes you wonder.
What's that?
Was there a part of her that wanted to, shed the weight of the Astor name?
It's possible.
Define herself on her own terms?
I like it. It's like she was saying, I've survived the Titanic. I've navigated the pressures of high society.
Right.
I'm going to live my life my way.
Right. It makes you wish, we had access to her diaries.
I know.
To really understand, what she was thinking.
Absolutely. But that's part of what makes exploring history so intriguing, isn't it?
Right.
We have these pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
The marriages, the tragedies, the glimpses into her personality.
Yeah.
And we try to put them together to understand the bigger picture. We started this deep dive thinking, we'd unpack the story of the Titanic widow.
Right.
But what we found, so much more compelling, a woman who lived through, unimaginable tragedy, defied those societal norms, and ultimately carved her own path.
I love that.
It really makes you think.
It does, doesn't it?
If the Titanic hadn't happened, how would we remember Madeline Astor today?
Would she just be a footnote in John Jacob Astor the Fifth's story?
Right.
Or would she be, celebrated for her resilience, her philanthropy, and her willingness to break the mold?
That's the question we'll leave you with today. Madeline Astor's life, it reminds us that history isn't just about dates and events. It's about real people,
Oh, I agree.
with their own dreams, desires, complexities.
I like that.
And sometimes the most captivating stories, they're the ones waiting to be discovered, beneath the surface.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.